Senhoras e senhores, mais uma vez, bom dia. É com muita satisfação que a Agência Nacional de Energia Elétrica os recebe para o Seminário Técnico Experiência Internacional sobre Bess Grid Forming. Cumprimentamos também aos que nos assistem ao vivo pelo Teams. Solicitamos a todos que façam a leitura do QR Code em seu crachá para marcarmos a sua presença no evento. O encontro, que contará com a participação de especialistas e representantes do setor elétrico, busca contribuir com as discussões tratadas no âmbito da Consulta Pública número 39 de 2023, que propõe aprimoramento da regulação para a inserção de sistemas de armazenamento, incluindo usinas reversíveis ao sistema elétrico brasileiro. O objetivo é apresentar diferentes experiências internacionais a respeito da integração de baterias ao sistema a partir da visão sobre integrações, padrões internacionais e oportunidades para o sistema brasileiro, além de trazer a discussão sobre a formação de redes para sistema com relevante inserção de energias renováveis intermitentes. Abordaremos temas como tendências para padrões internacionais sobre Grid Forming, a experiência dinamarquesa sobre Grid Forming, a experiência chinesa e a experiência chilena sobre os desafios para a integração de sistemas de armazenamento, resultados do projeto de P&D, aplicação de armazenamento de energia em baterias BESS no sistema brasileiro. E finalizando, os desafios da Califórnia sobre as soluções para a resiliência energética e inovação tecnológica. E agora, convidamos ao palco para a abertura deste seminário o diretor-geral da ANEEL, Sandoval Feitosa, o diretor da ANEEL, Ricardo Tille, e o diretor de Estudos de Energia Elétrica da Empresa de Pesquisa Energética, Reinaldo Garcia. Convidamos o diretor de Estudos de Energia Elétrica da EPE, Reinaldo Garcia, para sua fala.
Bom dia a todos. Primeiramente, gostaria de agradecer o importante convite feito pela ANEEL de estar aqui abrindo esse importante evento, compartilhando a minha abertura com os diretores Sandoval Feitosa, diretor-geral, e o diretor Ricardo Tille. É também uma imensa honra, né, receber o convite da ANEEL, que é minha casa de origem, onde eu tenho bastante orgulho de ter trabalhado lá e atualmente está cedido para a EPE. Bom, também gostaria de dizer que estou aqui representando o presidente da EPE, o Thiago Prado, que de última hora, por ter uma agenda demandada pelo ministro de Minas e Energia, não pôde estar presente. No entanto, ele mandou um abraço a todos. Tá? Estou aqui representando o Thiago Prado. Gostaria também de cumprimentar o diretor da Grid Connection, Juanei Carlos Alvarez Ortega. Diretor de Planejamento de Outorgas de Transmissão do Ministério de Energia, Guilherme Zanetti Rosa. Gostaria de cumprimentar também o gerente de Engenharia Sul do ONS, André Dalla Roca. Diretor de Negócios e Desenvolvimento da State Grid do Brasil, senhor Wang Juliang. E é isso. Bom, hoje se pretende discutir nesse importante seminário sobre soluções de armazenamento de energia, Bess Grid Forming. O armazenamento de energia vem ganhando um papel cada vez mais relevante na nossa matriz elétrica. E, conforme divulgado, esse seminário ele se insere no contexto da Consulta Pública ANEEL número 39 de 2023, buscando aí aprimorar a regulação para a inserção dessa tecnologia no Sistema Interligado Nacional. É importante destacar que, com a expansão massiva de renováveis variáveis em nosso sistema, o operador nacional do sistema precisa de recursos cada vez mais rápidos e flexíveis. O operador tem se deparado cada vez mais com os desafios das rampas de carga no nosso sistema, que se intensifica no decorrer da tarde até o início da noite. E o armazenamento ele surge aí como uma alternativa viável para trazer mais segurança e estabilidade ao nosso sistema. E a EPE, ela vem trabalhando ativamente para apoiar essas transformações. Destaco algumas das nossas principais contribuições no setor. E aí eu trago aqui o estudo determinativo da contratação de baterias, aquela solução na subestação registro, um estudo que resultou na contratação de 30 megawatts de bateria no litoral norte paulista para atender uma ponta de carga naquele sistema, principalmente em períodos críticos como Natal e Ano Novo. Foi uma solução provisória até que a solução definitiva ou estrutural entrasse em operação, uma solução estrutural que foi licitada em 2014, mas problemas ambientais e também problemas do sistema de supervisão de voo ali, tem uma base aérea na cidade de Guarulhos, teve que enrijecer seus critérios de aproximação e afetou ali um trecho da faixa de servidão da linha, ficou meio limitada. E aí, em razão disso, essa linha perdurou-se aí, essa obra, ela ficou atrasada, acho que recentemente entrou em operação comercial. A ANEEL instruiu um grande processo de reequilíbrio econômico, que depois a EPE, demanda do Ministério, fez uma reanálise dessa solução e conseguiu, de fato, depois que também o órgão de sistema de proteção ao voo relaxou alguns dos critérios, conseguiu, de fato, implementar a solução na mesma faixa de servidão, com redução da altura das torres e outras alterações possíveis no estudo de planejamento. Além dessa ação, a EPE ela tem avaliado os modelos de armazenamento. Foi uma demanda aí do Ministério, que analisamos prós e contras de diferentes modelos, como arranjo standalone, arranjo híbrido. Além disso, avaliamos a possibilidade do armazenamento prover outros serviços, por exemplo, como serviços ancilares. Também, dentro do planejamento da EPE de longo prazo, nós publicamos o caderno de geração do novo PDE 2034, publicado no final do ano passado. Lá uma projeção indicativa de contratação de soluções de armazenamento de 200 megawatts ano, iniciando em 2030 e ao final do horizonte do estudo, em 2034, perfazendo um total de 800 megawatts de possibilidade de contratação de soluções de armazenamento. Além disso, a EPE participa ativamente de projetos de P&D em Bess, acompanhando de perto projetos como empilhamento dos benefícios de Bess como ativo de transmissão. Foi realizado esse evento recentemente com a consultora Quantum, o último workshop realizado na EPE no ano passado, e os resultados finais serão apresentados em breve no ONS para serem incorporados alguns detalhes dessas soluções em nossos modelos de planejamento. Além disso, a EPE tem contribuído com importantes debates sobre o tema, tais como um seminário promovido pelo Ministério de Minas e Energia sobre perspectivas e desafios para baterias, realizado em 24 de maio, onde apresentamos nossa visão sobre requisitos de potência no planejamento. Foi um importante seminário coordenado pelo Ministério, teve a participação da ANEEL, o superintendente Alessandro Cantarino, acho que também a Ana Cláudia esteve presente, representando o diretor Ricardo Tille, e também participamos de uma importante audiência pública na Câmara dos Deputados, em março de 2024, sobre a possibilidade de contratações de soluções de bateria. Foi um debate bastante caloroso, bastante rico, com diversos agentes dos setores, associações, instituições e parlamentares. Bom, aqui, para finalizar, nesse seminário tem um sentimento de grande expectativa, pois teremos aqui a oportunidade de ouvir especialistas internacionais, nacionais, que compartilharão suas experiências sobre aplicações, integrações, padrões e inovações no uso do armazenamento de energia. Destaco que, na parte da tarde, a EPE está presente na sessão 5, debatendo os resultados do projeto PID, aplicação, armazenamento de energia de baterias no sistema elétrico. Esse debate contará com a presença do nosso especialista Francisco, que está aqui na plateia, presente. Gostaria que todos participassem. E é isso, agradeço mais uma vez de estar aqui na abertura deste importante evento. Desejo aí um excelente seminário a todos. Obrigado.
Obrigada pelas palavras, Reinaldo, e convidamos neste momento para suas considerações e boas-vindas o diretor da ANEEL, Ricardo Tille.
Bom dia a todos os senhores, todas as senhoras. É com imenso prazer e orgulho que eu dou boas-vindas a todos aqui nesse pequeno evento para discutir um pouco sobre o armazenamento de energia elétrica, sobre a regulação do armazenamento de energia elétrica no Brasil. Antes de começar, queria cumprimentar o diretor-geral Sandoval Feitosa, meu colega da ANEEL, diretor da EPE Reinaldo, meu amigo, a todos presentes. E eu me permita, antes de começar a falar, fazer um agradecimento especial à minha ex-assessora Ana Cláudia Cirino. Foi ela que conseguiu, primeiro foi ela que teve a ideia de fazer esse seminário e ela conseguiu realizar isso de forma com tanto sucesso e quanto a procura para participar desse seminário. Ela, a partir dessa semana, ela deixou a minha assessoria, está indo para um novo desafio, acho que vai ser adjunta de uma superintendência grande da ANEEL, que é a Superintendência de Fiscalização. Tenho certeza que ganha a superintendência com a presença da Ana, perde a assessoria com a saída dela, mas isso faz parte do ciclo da vida. Discutindo com a Ana sobre a CP 39, que é de minha relatoria, como todos sabem, a gente está regulamentando o armazenamento de energia no Brasil, e aí basicamente em dois pilares, armazenamento químico e armazenamento hidráulico, o apoio principalmente da Superintendência SRG, cumprimentar o Alessandro Cantarino, que tem nos apoiado muito nisso, e durante a discussão a gente tem a oportunidade de debater com as empresas, com outros países, com pessoas do mundo inteiro, de como está isso, qual é o estado da arte disso no mundo, como o mundo tem superado os desafios que ainda não nos foi colocado. E aí veio a ideia de que, na minha visão, diretor Sandoval, fazer um seminário, trazer uma experiência de fora para os técnicos da ANEEL. Porque, por vezes, eu, como diretor Sandoval, mesmo o Alessandro, a Ana, como o diretor Reinaldo citou aqui, temos a oportunidade de ter essa experiência, discutir essa experiência, mas, às vezes, o técnico do chão de fábrica mesmo, aquele da ANEEL, que efetivamente põe a mão na massa, não tem a oportunidade de tomar conhecimento de como outros países criaram soluções regulatórias para problemas que nós vamos ter que enfrentar. Então, nesse sentido, me veio a ideia de que a primeira ideia, tanto é com um auditório pequeno, para poucas pessoas, porque a ideia é trazer a experiência de outros países, e a gente está falando aqui hoje da Dinamarca, do Chile, da China, para ver como eles criaram soluções para criar, na minha visão aqui, criar um conhecimento técnico para subsidiar o conhecimento técnico da ANEEL. Então, esse foi o primeiro objetivo, mas isso se tornou público, muita gente de fora procurando, querendo também participar, opinar. Eu sei que todos aqui contribuíram na fase de contribuição pública para a CP 39, mas aqui eu acho que a maneira oral de se expressar ela tem um peso maior, a maneira de discutir. Nós fizemos isso num processo também de minha relatoria, que era o processo que revisou a norma do consumidor varejista. E, naquela época, nós fizemos em São Paulo, com o apoio da CCE, a gente levou os representantes das distribuidoras, os representantes das comercializadoras, o Wilson, que está hoje presidente do Conselho da Abracel, o Rodrigo, um parceiro muito grande, assim como o Madureira, naquele evento, e nós levamos o maior número de técnicos possível, e aquilo foi muito esclarecedor. Os técnicos da ANEEL entenderam o anseio não só das comercializadoras, mas também das distribuidoras, e tinha o Conselho de Consumidores, tinha consumidores livres, bastante consumidores, e evoluiu muito depois daquilo. Então, o objetivo aqui é ter a oportunidade dos agentes, trazer a experiência de fora e também ter a oportunidade dos agentes mostrar o anseio, quais são os anseios deles para a ANEEL, que no final do dia vai regulamentar. A gente vai fechar a consulta pública, assim que o Cantarina acabar de analisar lá, o Alexandre está analisando, mas assim, a gente vai fechar, pretendemos fechar, e a gente pretende continuar discutindo o assunto. A gente vai tratar de alguns temas, está na agenda regulatória da ANEEL, tem um roadmap de três sessões, a primeira está em andamento, a gente pretende continuar discutindo esse assunto e, mais uma vez, discutindo com a sociedade, tendo a oportunidade de aprender com a experiência exterior. Cada país lidou isso de uma maneira diferente. Vamos falar aqui da Califórnia. Eu tentei trazer, não consegui, um representante da Austrália, porque a Austrália tem umas características de armazenamento parecida com o Brasil. É um país que tem uma penetração de energia intermitente muito grande, uma dimensão continental, tem algumas características parecidas com o Brasil, poderia ser aproveitada, tem uma penetração de GD de 25%, bem maior que a nossa, e eles estão lidando com isso, com o armazenamento através de bateria. Eu acho que, quem sabe para a próxima, fica de sugestão a gente fazer isso. Então, assim, esse foi o objetivo, foi o desenho que nós pensamos aqui. Penso que quem está online, quem está vendo aí, são os técnicos, principalmente os técnicos da ANEEL, e aí incluo o Ministério, a EPE, a CCE, eu acho que todos que fazem parte de uma maneira ou outra de regular esse novo componente que vai ser, eu tenho certeza, muito importante para o setor elétrico brasileiro. Então, eu acho que esse foi o objetivo. Mais uma vez, agradecer a Ana pela dedicação, pelo empenho e pelo compromisso. Agradecer a todos que contribuíram com ela, que eu não vou citar para não correr o risco de deixar alguém de fora, mas eu sei que teve muitos que contribuíram, que trouxeram os seus melhores técnicos, pessoas que vieram de longe. Então, espero muito que seja proveitoso, que seja bastante enriquecedor, que esse dia tragam bastante fruto no nosso processo de regulação do armazenamento. Não só, a gente pensa em armazenamento de bateria, mas eu acho que o armazenamento hidráulico também é um assunto que precisa evoluir com rapidez aqui no nosso país. Mais uma vez, obrigado a todos, desejo-lhes um dia produtivo, um dia bastante profícuo. Obrigado a todos.
Obrigada pelas palavras, diretor Ricardo. Convidamos agora para suas considerações e boas-vindas o diretor-geral da ANEEL, Sandoval Feitosa.
Muito bom dia a todos e a todas. Primeiro, Ricardo, quero lhe parabenizar pela iniciativa. Na realidade, nós tínhamos pensado, e desde o início, o diretor Ricardo, um seminário técnico, inclusive, bastante restrito aos servidores da agência que estão envolvidos no trabalho. Mas a dimensão do trabalho foi aumentando, foi aumentando. Eu acho que a decisão foi correta de abrir de uma forma geral para toda a sociedade, uma vez que os conhecimentos, os aprendizados que serão discutidos aqui, eles serão replicados em grande medida para uso em distribuição, transmissão, geração e, quiçá, também para o uso doméstico individual dos próprios consumidores, quando o uso da bateria alcançar uma escala maior. Então, Ricardo, parabéns pela iniciativa. Senhoras e senhores, nós estamos diante de um momento de transição sem precedentes. Eu, antes de fazer minha fala, até cumprimentar o doutor Reinaldo, eu vou fazer aqui das minhas palavras, as palavras do doutor Reinaldo, que cumprimentou todos e a todas. Sejam todos, mais uma vez, muito bem-vindos. E, como eu havia dito, nós estamos num momento de transição sem precedentes que exige exatamente posturas como essa que estamos aqui hoje. Trabalho integrado, coordenado, de todas os stakeholders, os interessados. E aqui nós temos desenvolvedores, fabricantes, prestadores de serviços de distribuição, transmissão, geração e os próprios consumidores que geram também a sua própria energia. E o momento de transição que nós estamos vivendo hoje, ele é sem precedentes. Algo muito parecido com o que aconteceu com a Revolução Industrial no século XVII, com a geração de energia elétrica em escala no século XVIII. Quando a gente fala também de revolução, não podemos esquecer do desenvolvimento da internet no final dos anos 90, início dos anos 2000, e agora nós estamos tratando de uma espiral de inovações tecnológicas. Inteligência artificial, a revolução da forma de gerar energia elétrica, saindo de grandes máquinas, de grandes geradores, geração em massa, para uma geração cada vez mais discretizada e em menor escala. Vejam, eu falei século XVII, Revolução Industrial, século XVIII, geração de energia em grande escala. Levou-se aí um século. E depois disso, quando a gente fala de desenvolvimento da internet, nós estamos falando século XX praticamente entre 100 a 200 anos. E o que aconteceu com a inteligência artificial, o que está acontecendo com a inteligência artificial, o que está acontecendo com a geração de energia, ela é sem precedentes. Estamos falando aqui de intervalos de 10, 20, 30, 40 anos. E essa velocidade ela vai aumentar cada vez mais. O desafio dos reguladores é exatamente jamais limitar o desenvolvimento tecnológico. Não pode ser uma barreira ao desenvolvimento tecnológico. E nós jamais conseguiremos antecipar todos esses movimentos. É impossível fazer isso, por vários fatores. Primeiro, a limitação humana, a limitação de pessoal, a limitação por sermos também um órgão da administração pública e temos naturalmente um passo diferente, uma perna diferente do que o empreendedor, que ele é motivado, sim, sempre pelo desenvolvimento, pela eficiência econômica, eficiência dos processos. E o que nós temos que fazer é sempre facilitar esse desenvolvimento. E, claro, esse desenvolvimento ele decorre da grande capacidade de desenvolvimento da nossa ciência, e temos muito orgulho aqui no Brasil de o setor elétrico contar com mentes brilhantes, mentes próprias, mentes que depois surgiram exatamente pelo ambiente propício de desenvolvimento de novas tecnologias. A transição energética, como todos sabem, traz desafios à sociedade e ao setor elétrico, que requerem, mais uma vez, coordenação entre o regulador, formuladores de políticas públicas, os agentes e toda a cadeia produtiva, exatamente as pessoas e empresas que estão hoje representadas neste evento. A rápida evolução tecnológica está remodelando não só a forma como geramos e consumimos energia, mas também como regulamos e monitoramos a operação do sistema. Reinaldo falou rapidamente aqui dos desafios que o ONS está tendo e terá mais ainda no futuro próximo, se não adotarmos soluções que permitam ao operador maior flexibilidade para operar o sistema. A integração de baterias ao sistema elétrico, bem como a formação de redes para sistemas com relevante inserção de energias renováveis intermitentes, são temas de extrema importância para o futuro energético do nosso país. E aqui eu gostaria de mencionar que tivemos a oportunidade e o privilégio de conhecer uma rede Bess Grid Forming na Arábia Saudita durante uma missão internacional que fizemos, suportada pela Huawei. I'd like to thank Huawei again for the opportunity for that international and important mission in Saudi Arabia. Naquela oportunidade, fomos com a Ana Cláudia, assessora do diretor Ricardo, e Yasmin, que está aqui nos acompanhando também. Muito obrigado pelo suporte, foi realmente muito enriquecedor. E também tivemos a oportunidade, como o diretor Ricardo falou, de visitar um sistema de armazenamento hidrelétrico na Espanha e em Portugal. Acredito que o Brasil tem escala suficiente para que essas soluções combinadas tragam a flexibilidade que o sistema elétrico brasileiro irá precisar. Já precisa agora e irá precisar no futuro não muito distante. A ANEEL, como todos sabem, ela tem o DNA da inovação. É muito orgulhoso trabalhar em uma agência que ela não limita o desenvolvimento do mercado. Eu vou insistir e repetir essa frase. A ANEEL não limita o desenvolvimento do mercado. O que a ANEEL tem buscado desde a sua criação, a gênese da ANEEL é inovação, pioneirismo, empreendedorismo, o que a ANEEL busca sempre. A palavra que eu estou tendo a oportunidade de dar aula na universidade. E durante as minhas aulas, enfim, lembrando toda a teoria de regulação, Ricardo, tem uma palavra que, se você pudesse fazer aquela nuvem de palavras, é equilíbrio. Equilíbrio. Então, quando o regulador busca impor alguma limitação, é exatamente para recompor o famoso e necessário equilíbrio. Nós somos prodigiosos no Brasil. A gente tem vento em abundância, a gente tem sol em abundância, a gente tem água em abundância. A gente tem uma costa que, segundo estimativas da EPE, o potencial de geração eólica offshore supera 10 vezes, mais de 10 vezes, o nosso potencial onshore de produção de toda a nossa geração de energia necessária. Então, nós temos sol suficiente para gerar energia, talvez para todo o país, apenas com a fonte, apenas não, certamente, apenas com a fonte solar, nós teríamos como suprir toda a energia elétrica do país. Agora, a pergunta que se faz é, nós deveríamos privilegiar apenas essa fonte? Da mesma forma, o potencial eólico, ele também, em grande medida, se nós o explorarmos na sua completude, também seria necessário, seria suficiente para abastecer todo o país, mas também nós deveremos privilegiar aquela fonte? A resposta sempre é não. Nós temos que buscar o famoso equilíbrio. Então, Ricardo, essa nova fronteira que se abre, muito bem desenhada regulatoriamente, muito bem conduzida, com amplo diálogo que você tem proporcionado, deixará um legado relevante para o setor elétrico brasileiro. Nós partimos da nossa geração tradicional, com geração hidrelétrica, já superamos essa matriz, no sentido de que faremos e desenvolveremos outras fontes. Estudamos e implementamos as usinas híbridas, o que hoje vai ao interesse máximo, que é a entrega da energia ao cidadão. Então, não importando muito se ali tem hidrelétrica, solar, eólica, não, pode ser um combo, pode ser um mix, nós já regulamos isso. E agora vamos regular baterias. Qual é o uso que se espera da bateria? É para o caso que o Reinaldo mencionou lá em registro, que nós tivemos a oportunidade de ir, ou será para fornecer flexibilidade de serviços ancilares por um gerador? Possibilidade está sendo discutida. Ou será por uma distribuidora que também poderá fazer o seu controle de tensão, por exemplo, com baterias, ou evitar um investimento para ampliação, também com uso de baterias, ou no limite, um prosumidor comprar sua bateria e falar, olha, eu não quero mais me conectar à rede. É uma opção sua. Você gera durante o dia, armazena na sua bateria e usa durante a noite. Então, as possibilidades são inúmeras. E eu encerro aqui, Ricardo, mais uma vez lhe parabenizando pela iniciativa, pedindo muitas desculpas a todos que estão nos acompanhando remotamente, porque, de fato, o objetivo aqui era fazer um debate técnico, mas nós acabamos ampliando muito. Temos especialistas aqui, como o Ricardo falou, de várias partes do mundo, o que traz uma envergadura muito grande para esse evento. Então, Ricardo, saiba que esse trabalho seu vai deixar um grande legado para o Brasil e nós entraremos em uma nova fronteira ainda inexplorada. E o Wilson Ferreira, que está aqui, que a exemplo aqui do Ricardo, meu, já tivemos a oportunidade de conhecer o setor elétrico do passado, estamos aí tentando sobreviver no do futuro, mas é isso, acho que o futuro vem, nós temos que nos adaptarmos, e aí nós somos adaptáveis, né? Quem não se adaptou à realidade foi os dinossauros, foram extintos. Não vamos ter isso para a gente, né, Wilson? Forte abraço, gente. Bom evento.
Muito obrigada pelas palavras, senhor Sandoval. Nós agradecemos as palavras de todos que nos prestigiam nessa cerimônia de abertura. Pedimos que se posicionem para a foto oficial da abertura do evento e que em seguida retomem seus assentos na plateia. Muito obrigada. Agora, iniciaremos as sessões e apresentações dos temas, e para isso seguem algumas informações. Há fones com tradução simultânea para o espanhol, inglês e português na frente do nosso anfiteatro. Em caso de necessidade, não deixem de utilizar este recurso para o melhor aproveitamento do evento. Nesta tela e na tela do Teams, temos o QR Code que leva ao nosso canal de perguntas no WhatsApp. Nossos moderadores enviarão sua pergunta ao debatedor de cada sessão. Ao final das apresentações, também abriremos espaço para perguntas e interação do público presencial. Isso é só levantar a mão que nossa equipe de apoio leva o microfone até você. Dados os avisos iniciais, vamos às sessões de debate. Convidamos ao palco para a sessão 1, Tendências para padrões internacionais sobre Grid Forming, como debatedor nós convidamos o diretor do Departamento de Planejamento e Outorgas de Transmissão e Distribuição de Energia Elétrica e Interligações Internacionais do Ministério de Minas e Energia, Guilherme Zanetti Rosa. E como palestrante, o diretor da Huawei, Carlos Alvarez Ortega. Fiquem à vontade, agora o palco é de vocês.
Okay. Bon dia. Sorry, my presentation will be in English. I can understand Portuguese more or less, but I cannot speak. So let's try this time in English, and let's see if the following years I can do it in Portuguese one day. Anyway, so let's begin with. Can we see in the screen or? Okay, now let's see. Okay. I prepare something else. I think is not the latest version, but anyway, we cannot stop here. So let's start with what is grid forming and why do we need grid forming? Because I think it's the most important part for this understanding, no? for this session. And later we are going to talk about the strength of the grid, because the whole point of this grid forming is that we should implement grid forming in the weak grids, wherever the weak is grid forming can solve the issue, exactly like synchronous condenser will do. And then we will talk about the overview of the grid forming documents and Saudi case, because in Saudi it's quite interesting that the projects are massive there and not like everyone will think about fossil fuel, but it's about new renewable. In Saudi, they are building huge renewable plants based in PV and the storage. Oh yes, I think now it will be the latest version. So anyway, in Saudi case, I think will be very interesting to see that they are suggesting not only grid forming, but how to test grid forming, how to be sure that the grid forming is working. Because right now the challenge, I think, is so many manufacturers is claiming that they are providing grid forming. The most challenging part is to be sure that the grid forming will work. And the good thing for Brazil is that this is not new. I mean, the bad part, the hard part has been gone through in many countries already, like in Saudi, Australia, etc. So we can take advantage of that, and we use the lesson learned already. So this is good for Brazil. And this is just the other point I would like to mention is the pilot and commercial projects. Just to give overview, it's not just theoretical, but it's also real. There are so many real cases already working. And the final one will be, of course, some suggestions for Brazilian market. So let's start with what is grid forming and why do we need this new technology. And this is from Migrate project, and Migrate is a little bit, you can see, is massive integration of power electronic devices. It's a project in Europe, like in 2017, I think, based on how much renewable we can integrate into the grid. And let's see, maybe this is a pointer or, yes. So the solid blue line here is what will happen in the grid. Let me explain the axis. This is a stability of the power system. If we cross this line, minimum acceptable stability level, we will be in problems. There will be brownouts, blackouts, etc. So we cannot cross this one, or we will suffer blackouts. So with the traditional renewable power, and when I say, by the way, when I say renewable power, I'm always thinking about inverter-based resources, not hydro, of course, okay? So I will try to mention as new renewable power. So if we cross this line, and this axis, I cannot forget to explain, this axis is power electronic penetration, and this is just qualitative. Level 3, level 1, level 2, whatever, but this is just qualitative, thinking that this is 100. So if we are increasing the share of renewables, the stability of the grid will decrease, and we will face some issues. We have seen in so many countries already. So what can we do? Because the plan is to increase the share of renewables. So what we can do is to extend here and how by grid codes, by the traditional grid codes. And this is the origin of the grid code I will show you right now in Spain. But before that, I need to mention that there will be a limit here. Like with the traditional grid codes, we cannot go further certain limits with the new renewable technology. We need something else. We need a technology leap that we will see that will be the grid forming. So thinking about Spain, and take into account, this is 2005, long time ago. And this is the origin of the first grid code, at least the first grid code I know. Is in Spain, if there is a three-phase fault here, you see the voltage from 0 to rated voltage. If there is a fault here, and you know the size of Spain is very small compared to Brazil, but this is maybe 200 kilometers, 200 something kilometers, and if there is a lot of wind turbines here, there is a fault. Without fault right through, you will lose a lot of power instantaneously. One event, you will lose a lot of power synchronously, and this is a big problem. The synchronized events in the grid leads to a very big problems. So, for example, here, there was energization of a transformer in Spain at some point, and we lost in 2005 more than 1 giga of production. And then the system operator in Spain said, no, this is not affordable. We need to do something. And they created the first grid code. And the content of the grid code was fault right through. That's all. Okay? And with that, we could extend more new renewable power into the grid. And then more challenges. I mean, you fix one problem, and then you increase the share of renewable, and then you see another problem. So you need to improve the grid code like this. In 2016, the grid code in Europe appeared, etc. No? So we are going to extend the share of renewables in the grid, but there is a limit. And this is very well known for all of us here, is the event in Brazil 2023. So in the simulation, the result of the simulation was okay, but in the reality, more than 20 gigawatt of load had to be disconnected from the grid. No? And of course, it's an issue with the accuracy of the models, but also this is from IEEE 2800. It's saying that when the grid is weak, we need to move to electromagnetic transient modeling, no? EMT. And there is a mismatch between RMS simulation and the real behavior. This is very clear. And also in the new grids, when the grid is weak, we have short circuit current contribution missing. We have lack of inertia that leads to weakness in the grid. So the current grid code cannot prevent failures in the grid when the penetration of inverter-based resource is very high. The conclusion, we need something. We need to put more fossil fuel, go back in time, or grid forming solution. So this is a list by EPRI. This is not grid forming. This is in general a list of services that you need to manage the grid. Like voltage, sorry, it's very small maybe, but I can read some of them. You will know the complete list, no? But one is voltage regulation, short circuit contribution, black start, etc. Inertia, okay? So, and here we have different technologies. This first block here is synchronous services, then inverter-based resource with utility scale, and then distributed, and then loads. And then you see, like, for example, hydro can do the voltage regulation, short circuit contribution, black start, all the good things. Okay? But we cannot rely only on hydro, it's not enough. So we can rely on nuclear or coal or gas or renewables. And the renewable, the legend, the colors, is that the green one is that there is no problem. For example, inverter-based resources can do voltage control. There's no problem about that. But can provide short circuit current when there is a fault. If you see here by EPRI, I need to remember short circuit contribution of PV and Bess. Green and yellow means that for some vendors, they can provide short circuit contribution. For others, it's still in R&D, okay? So we can see that PV plus Bess, for some vendors or some technologies, we can provide all the services we need in the grid. There is some parts in green, right? And some parts means that the capability is there, okay? So the main meaning is that if the synchronous condenser or the fossil fuel can solve the problem for the grids, PV plus Bess can do it as well with the grid forming technology. But I need to explain what is the grid forming finally. We know that this fossil fuel is very grid friendly. The only problem is the emissions and the origin of the energy. But the electricity produced by the synchronous is super nice. Has been working for 100 years, very well. So what if we take the synchronous generator and let's try to emulate with the power electronics, of course, with some backup of energy. We need something there. We need some battery. With this, we can emulate the behavior of the synchronous generator. That's the main thing about grid forming, okay? So if we do that, we can provide the services that we are requiring in the grid. This is one screenshot of the main functionalities in the state-of-the-art grid forming Bess. And we can see that in case of fault, the black one is the traditional solution, providing a little bit of short circuit contribution, but the grid forming, the top grid forming, can provide up to 2 times, 3 times, can provide short circuit current. That will be very useful, for example, for the protection system, detecting faults, isolating the fault, etc., or for energizing inductor motors. In case of fault, the inductor motor will require a lot of reactive power for energizing again. No? So that's why this functionality is very useful. And mainly, with the traditional renewable power, the reaction is a little bit slow. So if there is something in the grid, and all the big wind power plants, solar power plant is reacting a little bit slow, maybe the system can collapse. So another main functionality for the grid forming is that we are going to react very fast in case of a voltage event or phase event, like phase jumps or something, no? Unbalance between the load and the generation. And we can provide inertia, and we can provide this power oscillation damping. That is more and more important and requested in different countries. And by the way, we have shown at the beginning that we were talking about the fault right-through in 2005, and 20 years later, we are talking also about fault right-through. So what's the thing? The point is that at the beginning, in 2005, the fault right-through was a problem in a very strong grid. And right now, what we are saying is, okay, in a strong grid, it's solved already. But what is happening in the weak grids? The control is much more complicated. So that's why it's here in the grid forming characteristics. Because faults in weak grids or isolated grids is very complicated to control. And the grid forming can do it. So this is the summary of the main functionalities. Yes? The traditional solution, when, I don't know if it's a standardized term, but when I'm saying that is the grid following solution. And the grid following solution is the solution that grids the voltage, calculate the things, and put current on it. If there is no voltage, this solution will not work because there is no voltage there to put current on it. Or, I mean, in some cases, it could be isolated but undesired island. No, it will be complicated, not desired work, no, operation. But mainly is that the difference. One needs the voltage to put the current on it, and the grid forming will create the voltage. That's the main difference. Yes. So the main question here is where to install grid forming. And I'm always thinking that if we can translate the electricity power grids to mechanical system, so there will be some points in which you need to damp the oscillation. Then you need to put a damper there, no, for stabilizing the grid. So the grid forming is like the damper. So how to select the buses in which the grid is weaker? If we can identify them, we can put the damper there and stabilize the grid. So this is, of course, it's too much, but the main point here is the definition in this is in this standard, and there are some metrics, and like the most typical one is the SCR. The SCR is the short circuit power in the point of connection divided by the power of the plant you are connecting to. But when the grid is very strong and the inverter-based resources are not so many, this is a good indicator. But when the renewable integration is very large, this is not a good indicator because you are not considering the effect of others. So we need to do something else. There are many people thinking about that, defining composite short circuit ratio or weighted short circuit ratio, whatever. And there is one here, is very interesting, is considering these interaction factors between different plants. And the interesting thing here is that Brazil is using that one in some analysis I saw of what, sorry? ONS, of course, yes. So ONS is using this factor for analyzing or detecting where the weak buses are in the grid. No? And of course, the definition is a weak system has high source impedance. And then it means that if you put some current on it, the voltage will move a lot. So, thinking about this, the calculation of this factor is not very easy, but it will consider all the equipment around, all the interactions. So it will be, so far, the good parameter for detecting the weak the weak buses in the grid. And there is this result from ONS specifying in the solid bars here is the SCR, and in the line is the MISCR. It means that the values are more or less correlated, but not so directly. Like, for example, in this bus, SCR is 5, and this factor is almost 7. And for example, here, SCR is 3.6, and this factor is 0.45. So at the end, the message is that considering this mutual interaction short circuit ratio, we can identify the buses that has like a lot of power electronics around affecting the voltage. In those buses, we can think about synchronous condenser, that we are very sure that it will work because it's a technology 100 years. But if there is battery around, and we are going to put grid forming in those batteries, we can save all the cost of the synchronous condenser. That's the main part. For example, what is happening in Saudi is that there are some buses around the country, and I'm talking about Saudi because right now I'm based in Middle East and I know the market more or less. But in Saudi, there are some buses with very weak grid, and there is nothing around, and there is no storage. In that case, makes sense to put synchronous condenser there. But in places in which there is already storage, make good use of this. No? So we can put the grid forming capability on in that storage, and we will save all the capex related to the synchronous condenser plus all the opex for 20 years. So I think makes a lot of sense not to think about that in the planning. So about the grid forming documents right now, as I said at the beginning, this is not new. We are not trying here. We can check what is happening in other countries, for example, in UK or Australia or Europe in general here, or United States. So there are many documents talking about the grid forming right now. And thinking about the timeline of those, we can see that it started. I think the first patent about grid forming was in 1985, something like this. And there was a solution by SMA in 2000, at least I worked with that 2011. One inverter called Sunny Boy, so it's quite old. But these first requirements about the grid connection, 2000 to 2000, right now, no? And this document is quite good, published in March 2024, and right now there is new regulation appear again and again. For example, IEC is working on grid forming document together with IEEE. We are going to see it later. So it's like very hot topic right now. And we can take a very quick overview about the US. That one interesting point here about US is that, okay, we need to provide grid forming solution thinking like it's like a synchronous generator, like a voltage source with impedance. So if there is no synchronous generator, the system will still keep working. But this topic about islanding and black start, this is very important because the islanding is something related to safety of the grid. So can we deploy like islanding ready solution anywhere? No, this one should be discussed with the system operator to think very clearly where the system that can run an island will be, because it's very related to the safety. So that's why here the requirement is that it will be implemented in coordination with the system operator and could vary from site to site. Okay, but mainly the requirement is response to phase jumps, inertia, response to symmetrical. One very typical characteristics in US is that they are considering asymmetrical faults. So, but let's move to Australia. In Australia, the main thing is what happens when the grid is very, very weak. So the SCR will be very low. So still the grid forming solution should keep working. And before that, this is important to mention that it's voluntary specification for grid forming, but there is another document is requirement test framework. So it gives a guide about how to measure this grid forming solution. And here, the main technical requirements is maintenance of voltage source behavior, again, proving that really it works as voltage source with impedance, like a synchronous generator, and adaptability to very low short-circuit ratio. What happens when there is no synchronous generator there? In UK, the problem in UK is that the grid is not so strong and the inertia is a little bit low, so the frequency is could go up and down in case there is some mismatch between generation and loads. So they are very focused on the inertia response and how fast you react providing active power. And in Germany, they are concerned because they are shutting down nuclear and everything. So in this case, they are concerned about what happens if there is no synchronous generators around. And also they have a lot of renewable power from Denmark, and the grid is affected. So they are thinking about, of course, mostly the same, no inertia, but finally, that's right here, power oscillation damping, because when there is a lot of controllers there could interact in different frequencies. So it's important that the grid forming will damp those oscillations, but also this maintenance of voltage source behavior. This is super important here. And I have gone fast through it, but some qualitative summary of the things we have seen right now, mostly that we need to work with very low short-circuit ratio. We need to provide inertia. We have to prove the voltage source behavior, to react about the rate of change of frequency, provide oscillation damping, power oscillation damping, and fault drive-through. And operation under system unbalance. In most of the countries right now, they are focused just in symmetrical component or balanced events. But in US, they are talking about unbalance as well. And talking about qualitative, but what happens about the quantities here, just a short overview, thinking about China, UK, Australia, and Germany, we can see that if something happens with the voltage, the reaction should be in 5 or 10 milliseconds. In the inertia should be in 5 milliseconds as well. If there is a phase jump, you need to still keep working stably. And about overload capacity, in China, they are requesting 3 per unit. In UK, 1.5. In Europe, we are talking about 1.2. The thing is, if there is a fault, we need to inject some extra reactive current to support the grid, okay? And one particular point about Mexico is that in Mexico, they are including the UK standard about grid forming. And I'm not talking about Chile. In Chile, the grid forming standard is already developed, quite mature, because my friend Simon will talk about that later. But it's not only China, US. In Latin America, there are some cases, like Mexico, Chile. Okay. So it's, as we discussed at the beginning, it's getting bigger, no? This topic about grid forming. And what I said about the IC technical specification about grid forming is starting right now, very recent. We discussed about the first draft in the, I think, last week, maybe. I don't know which day is today, but I think it was last week. And one interesting point, there are 2 points I want to mention, is that this one is in coordination with the IEEE, so it could be very interesting standard, because mostly IC is used in Europe and maybe Asia, but not so much in America. So if we are doing this job together with IEEE, I think the application will be quite more international than without them. No? And the other thing I want to mention is that they are suggesting, the IC group is suggesting to bring more experts from other countries as well. And they mention specifically about Latin America. I think if there is any expert interested about this topic, could join the IC technical committee for discussing about this. I think it's the right time right now. And we have been talking about, by the way, I don't know how much time, maybe 10 minutes more or less, but we have been talking about the requirements like inertia, short circuit contribution, power isolation damping, but how to measure? This is not so well defined yet. So that's the main point of this standard, is at European level. Just to remember that if the standard starts with 6, it's IC, international level. If it starts with 5, it's European level. So you can easily recognize that this is European level. And this is about how to measure the voltage source properties, how to measure the power quality, mostly thinking about harmonics, inertia response, operation during critical events, mostly based on fault right through and frequency right through, and controller interactions. So the main point of this standard is how to measure in order to be able to compare different solutions. So I will show only this, this main summary here. Is the objective of this standard is define and determine the characteristic parameters of the grid forming devices, enabling laboratory-based black box testing, because usually for this technology, we or the manufacturers are not saying open box. It's always black box because it's very new technology. It's a little bit critical, no? So in this is considering that the black box is the only thing we have. So we are going to measure according to this, and implementation neutral evaluation. So it's technology agnostic and so on. So how to do this? Voltage source behavior. In each chapter, there is some specific procedures for all the qualities of the grid forming. There are some specific test benches to apply, like triggering some breakers and so on, and in order to a method for how to characterize each of them. And about Saudi, is quite impressive, in my opinion, that in such a country with a lot of oil, etc., the planning is for 2030 to have 50% of the generation covered by renewables. In order to do that, because the grid is not very messed, there are not so many transmission lines. So they are thinking that the BESS, the storage, is the only solution. So the plan is to build, I think, up to 70 gigawatt hour from here to 2030. But last year, there was an auction for 8 gigawatt hour. This year, 10 gigawatt hour. Next year, another 10 gigawatt hour. So it's crazy. So, but they think, they know about the challenge. So in all the projects, they are requesting. When I say they, I mean National Grid is the TSO of Saudi, together with SPPC. SPPC is this company here, government owner entity in Saudi responsible for procuring electricity from IPPs. So they are thinking the grid forming is the solution. Without grid forming, the system will collapse. And in Saudi, it's very critical because the blackout is critical anywhere, but in Saudi, in summer, it's 50 degrees, 55 degrees. So if there is a blackout and the air conditioner is not working, it will be very dangerous. In Europe, maybe there is no electricity, my fridge, whatever. But in Saudi, it's 55 degrees. So it's not a choice. So they are including grid forming capabilities in all the projects. And in the grid forming capabilities, one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning is that the grid forming is no binary. It's no yes or no. No, there are so many functionalities, and in each functionality, there are different levels. So we need to consider. In Saudi, for example, they are requesting, as we have seen in other countries, mostly the same, no? Power isolation damping, rock off, phase jump, etc. So in each capability, there are different levels and different details. But in Saudi, this is mandatory in all the projects, the Black Star. So also, what is happening in Saudi? In Saudi, they know that the model is very critical. So that's why in Saudi, they are requesting EMT simulation, not only RMS. They need RMS simulation, of course, but they need also EMT in order to try what is happening when the grid is super weak and what is happening when you are putting grid forming solution. So here, just to give you an idea about the EMT models, in blue is the EMT model result, and in red is the real result when you do the same case in the laboratory. And here in blue is the RMS simulation result, and in red is again the real result. You see a big difference. But you may think that something will happen, and finally, in the reality, something totally different will happen. In some critical cases, we need the EMT. When the grid is very weak, when there is a lot of renewable, we need EMT studies. And here, for example, with the PSCAD model, we see that if we trigger one line, there will be some oscillation, some harmonics. And in the same event, in the same simulation with the RMS, you don't see anything. So in Saudi, EMT models are mandatory. And this is something that we are going to see later in the case of Chile, but in Saudi, they are also requesting RTDS simulation. The EMT models are accurate, but if you want to increase the accuracy of the simulation, you are going to put the real controller in the RTDS simulation. And then the results will be very, very accurate. What I can show here, just a picture that we were actually in the university in Saudi, and we are doing the test right now. And this is what Huawei is doing. So we are doing in-house the models of the grid forming solution, or grid following, whatever, but in the grid forming is quite critical. We are doing the models. We are running hardware in the loop, but we have full-scale laboratory in China, and we have also plants in which we can try the solution. So we can feed back in the model to increase the accuracy. But at country level, for the requirements of a country, I would say, of course, every country is requesting the models, but we should include in the regulation the RTDS simulation, RTDS or OPAL or whatever, but hardware in the loop simulation. I think this is needed for checking the grid forming performance. And almost finishing the presentation, some real cases of grid forming. For example, this one, quite recent here. This one is in Scotland, a very large battery connected to transmission for providing grid forming. It's very close to super big offshore wind farms. So that's why they need grid forming capabilities to stabilize the grid without fossil fuels. And of course, because they are optimizing the grid efficiency, they will reduce the energy bills for the consumers. That also, in my opinion, is the final objective of all of this. This is another one, quite interesting, because this is only wind turbines with virtual synchronous machine there. They are using the kinetic inertia in the shaft of the wind turbines. There is another one, I think is the largest one, 1.6 gigawatt hour in Australia. And finally, another one also in Australia. And I like this, how to provide frequency support, inertia, etc. And finally, providing more stable voltage to the new renewables around. And for, yes, some note here about AEMO, the system operator in Australia, that they predict that Australia will need at least 50 gigawatt by 2050 to reach net zero. And for finishing the slide, finally, suggestions for Brazilian regulation. We can think about providing black start for big or critical projects. This should be aligned with ONS, not required for all the plants, but for the critical or very big ones. This is mandatory to provide inertia, to be able to run fall right through, be able to work in a very weak condition, to provide overload capability for supporting island or energizing induction motors, rock off, how to prevent rate of change of frequency, and power oscillation damping. And finally, my strong suggestion is to run some hardware in the loop simulations, because the simulation model should be very accurate for the stability of the grid. And that's all. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm ready for questions.
Mr. Ortega, congratulations for the presentation. It was very clear and brought us a very good highlight about the technology, about the situations. And this is very important for us here on behalf of the transmission lines planning in Brazil as the government. I can tell you that slide where you presented Brazil's case was very precise, and we are dealing with this problem until today. I mean, the system operator has just recently brought us a short-term solution, a short-term relief for the weak grid that causes that occurrence. And the long-term planning conducted by EPE is right now dealing with a structural solution that, for instance, will be determining more and more machines. I mean, the operator solution was 3 emergential synchronous condensers. But I believe the structural solution brought by EPE will study solutions that might be or not more and more condensers machines. And this information about alternatives is very, very valuable, which is why I thank you very much for this presentation. And we have some questions brought from the audience, which I will put to you right now. And feel free, everybody, to send us a little bit more. The organization has said that we have right now 15 minutes more on this panel, okay? The first one is connected to that scenario I described about the Brazilian case, because, well, the question is, do you think the Bess Grid Forming solution could have avoided Brazil blackout in 2023? And is MISCR a good indicator to identify suitable solutions to install Bess Grid Forming? And I would add a little additional question on these ones, which is the economic viability of the solution. Because as I said, the planning company in Brazil, EPE, is studying solutions. The traditional solution, for instance, is the synchronous condensers, but we have alternatives such as grid forming BESS. Economically, how is this viable to replace traditional solution as synchronous condensers for this new technology as battery with grid forming? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The question about if grid forming could prevent the blackout is not so easy, because there should be a lot of factors. But I would say first, if you run the suggested RTD simulation, of course the accuracy of the model could be much better, and then we could foresee what will happen, no, in that particular case. Try to match much better, no, with the reality. But theoretically, of course, if there is a fault, all the inertia that the grid forming can provide could solve the problem. I think the output of that report is that if we locate certain, I don't remember in the report, maybe 9 synchronous condensers in the...
They signalized 9, but only 3 were indicated as a zero regret solution.
Yes.
The other ones will be held by EPE as a structural solution.
I think we are considering 3, but in the report they mention like 9, no? So if we are placing the grid forming in the places where the synchronous condenser are like foreseen, it could solve the problem, because in Huawei we have tried the synchronous condenser compared to grid forming in some substation in China with real short circuits, and the results were pretty good. And I totally understand that you are considering synchronous condenser, because the system operator traditionally is quite conservative, and I'm not putting any negative adjective. I mean, it's traditionally conservative because it's very critical. But I would buy this solution if it should be the first grid forming in the world here. But we have the chance of checking what is happening worldwide, because there are grid formings deployed already, so many. So we can check that it's not, let's try and see. No, it's something that is working already. So I think this is a very good point for you, that a very good opportunity. So you can not try, you can see what is happening, you can see real performance and see that will work and put it here. And about the economically, if it's viable or not, as I said in the case of Saudi, when there is no storage around and you need to stabilize the grid, in that case, I suggest as well synchronous condenser, because the overall cost of the grid forming solution, if you are not provide anything else, is more expensive. But if you are considering, or if you have already storage in the planning, or you have a storage deployed, it's just to increase the capability. And so economically will be much better than a storage plus synchronous condenser. No, storage with grid forming. You will save a lot, because the increase of the cost of the synchronous the increase of the cost of grid forming solution so small, because the storage, that is the biggest part of the project, is the same. So that's why I think it's much more, makes more sense to think about grid forming rather than install synchronous condenser.
This is very valuable information. Thank you very much. The question also asks about your opinion about, is the MI-SCR a good indicator to identify suitable substations to install the best grid forming solution? Is it?
In my opinion, and according to what we have seen, is not totally okay. Could be okay in cases like I mentioned at the beginning, 2006, there were some wind turbines around to calculate the SCR, okay, because there were no interactions between others, because they were far away, one from each other. But right now, for example, North east of Brazil. There are so many that they are interacting with each other. So if the voltage changes in one bus, it will be seen in the other bus. So you need to do some extra calculation. That's why this mutual interaction short circuit ratio is a very good indicator, and that's the one that ONS is applying with a very good criterion in my perspective.
Thank you. We have another one, which is, it's 3 questions in one. What is the criteria for sizing the system that use grid forming? Does it depend on the type of service we want to provide to the grid? Will a system capable of offering black start be different from one designed to be frequency control?
Yes, so if you are thinking about only frequency control, you may not need like overcurrent capacity just to play with the active power, no? But if you are thinking about black start, was in the question was black start, frequency control, and
yes, it's majorly about sizing, dimensioning the system.
So if you are considering, for example, black start, there are some studies by Enel in Italy thinking about how to energize one part of the grid. So it's very clear that if you don't have short circuit contribution higher than 1 per unit, you cannot ramp up properly some loads in the grid. So the grid will be not stable and could lead to a critical situation. So in that case, for energizing some grids, you will need more provision of short circuit current. For frequency control, you don't need so much. So maybe you need to put extra PCS. The PCS is the power conversion system. No, it's like the inverter in the PV. So you may need to put extra for providing more current, but the cost of that component is low compared to the storage. So the impact of this is not so much. And how to size, this is, there are so many research about that right now. It's not so clear. There is one PV in Abu Dhabi, I think, is 1.5 gigawatt hour, and they are requesting 50% grid forming. And why 50%? No one knows clearly, but they say 50%. This is how they calculate that. We can think about, with RTDS simulation, we can think about how much extra or how much grid forming is needed facing certain kind of events. This is a very interesting research we can do. But it's not so clear. No? It depends on the location.
Okay, that's nice. Thank you. We have another one here. Brazil currently lacks business models and government regulatory policies conducive to the development of energy storage. Do you have any suggestions for regulations?
And luckily for me, I'm purely in the technical side. So, so about regulation and incomes, etc., I think it's better to ask any other.
Yes, I would just point out that your presentation, your information will be available not only for technical solutions that are being designed, but also for the regulation that is being constructed by the regulatory agency, by Enel. Of course, it will be available for sure.
Of course, we have the case of UK, that there are different markets to get revenue from the plants with different services. But as I said, I'm not an expert in that. So I'm sorry.
That's perfect. We have several other questions, but only 5 minutes left. So let me select. Okay, this one. How do you simulate the calculation of SCR when integrating wind and solar power plants to the grid? What software or tools can you use, and what key parameters do you consider in the analysis?
So for calculating the strength of the grid with the SCR is very, very simple. You run just the short circuit current analysis, You get the short circuit power in your bus and you divide and get the factor. No? But as we said, we need the interaction between other plants. So how to do that with the mutual interaction factor? We need to know the relationship between, if we change the voltage in one bus, we can check what is the change in the voltage in the bus you are thinking about. And doing that with the nearby area, you will get the in mutual interaction factor for all the buses considered. So you can put, the formula is there, you can put all the sum of all the powers multiplied by the induction factor, and you will get the result. So it's a little bit complicated. You need more analysis, not just click one button, but much useful than the short circuit ratio.
Okay, Mr. Ortega, I think that's enough. Let's end up the panel right here. And just to point out again, thank you very much for your information. Very valuable information for sure. It will be very useful for our results here. Technical results as solutions for the system, and regulatory results as the work that agency is currently conducting. Okay, thank you very much.
Muito obrigado.
Excelente discussão. Agradecemos ao Guilherme Zanetti e ao Carlos Ortega. Agora nós daremos início à sessão 2. O tema é Grid Forming, a experiência dinamarquesa. Neste momento, convidamos ao palco, como debatedora, a chefe adjunta do gabinete do diretor-geral da ANEEL, Lívia Ragi. E o palestrante, conselheiro-chefe para a cooperação global da Agência Dinamarquesa de Energia, Louis Algrim. Fiquem à vontade, o palco é de vocês.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to share some Danish experiences here. Thank you for ANEEL to having this. No, is there any problems? No, okay. Yeah, thanks to ANEEL for having this international seminar. It's very clear from Ms. Ortega's presentation that there's a lot to learn from many different countries, and I definitely learned a lot from this presentation. And it's also good to see that the technical seminar is in fact technical today, so we can go in details with the technical issues. I'm not sure I can deliver exactly the same level, but maybe some other interesting experiences here from Denmark. And the pointer, yes. All right, so first I'll give a short introduction to the Danish electricity system, and then some experiences on batteries, and after that on grid forming. So first, the electricity system here. We have in Denmark, we have had a quite flat demand profile the last few decades, actually, since the 80s. But we have had a large change in the electricity mix, so ramping down the thermal capacity and ramping up the renewables, especially wind. We don't have any hydro in Denmark. It's a complete flat country, but it's very windy, so we do have a lot of wind. In 23, we had 58% wind on average for the whole year, and 10% solar, so 68% variable renewables for the country. Yeah, quite high share, and definitely a challenge to integrate. We still managed to have quite a high level of security of supply, an average outage of 20 minutes per year, and we've had that quite stably through the last 10, 15 years, or 20 years, and is rated quite high in Europe so far. So how do we manage this? High share of renewables combined with a higher level of security of supply. Well, there are two parts or two things that are main solutions: interconnectors and markets. Denmark is a transit country here in the northern Europe. Maybe you don't know it. It's quite small, only 6 million people. So now you know, between Norway, Sweden, and Central Europe with Germany. So we do have a lot of interconnectors and exchange with all our neighboring countries. We have more interconnectors than our peak demand today, actually. So we are able to supply the full load from connections to 5 different neighbors: Norway, Sweden, Germany, Netherlands, and UK. Yeah, and we are divided in 2 price. These are the price zones. So this is from Nord Pool, the market operator. And in Denmark, we have Eastern Denmark and Western Denmark. And they're actually also two different synchronous areas, where Eastern Denmark belongs to the Nordic system and Western Denmark belongs to Central Europe. So these 2 areas are only connected with a DC connection. And they, of course, have different challenges because it's different synchronous areas. So last night, I just took a look at the electricity mix Monday to Wednesday this week. So very fresh data you could see here. The red profile is the demand profile, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The green is the electricity price. And here we have solar, of course, and wind is the dark blue, and the lighter blues are thermal capacity. So here we are producing much less than our demand. So obviously a lot of import these three days. But then I had a look at what it looked like the Monday to Wednesday last week. And that is a quite different image you can see here. I should mention this is only the western part of Denmark. It's not the full country. And most of the wind power is in western Denmark. So this looks a bit extreme. But here you can see we have more than 100% of renewable a lot of the time throughout 3 days. And we have quite low electricity prices. So all of this is, of course, exported. We also have very low operation of the thermal plants. And that's also something we're trying to continuously push. How low can we go in inertia from thermal plants and having solar and wind operate as much as possible? So lots of exports these 3 days, negative prices. And perhaps an interesting observation here is when the price is negative, then we have a quite sudden drop in production from wind. And that is, of course, because of the price becomes negative, the wind turbines shuts off, the power is not needed. But this can be a challenge for the system if this happens very fast, and I'll come back to that. And you can see similar drops over here and also here. So that is the nature of the market, you could say. So we already have a quite high share of renewables, but we are only getting started, you could say. We also had a quite flat profile of demand the last few decades, but that's not how we see the future. We expect a lot of new different kinds of demand, not the classical demand, but data centers. Now AI was mentioned earlier today. We already have a few data centers, and we expect a lot more, but also hydrogen production. That's going to be, or at least that's our projection, that's going to be a very large part of the consumption, covering more than 50% of the total electricity consumption is our expectation by 2050. We also do have some electrification of the transport sector and electrification of the heating sector. And to supply all of this demand, we still count on renewables. Lots of solar power, onshore wind, and offshore wind. And to keep the balance in this system, that is definitely going to be a challenge. And we are still going to rely on the market, but that's not enough. I think we need we need more different kinds of tools. And to me, at least, it's clear that all these new kinds of demands, they have to show some kind of flexibility for this to match. We can't have them operate whenever they like and not considering the profiles of the solar and wind production. And that is actually to some extent happening today. The demand response, you can see a daily demand profile from private households in different years, 21 to 24. And especially here at night, you can see that the demand is going up every year. And also here at the afternoon peak demand, it's going down. Not a lot, but still something. And that is, we expect that is incentives from the market for flexible consumption, probably mainly from electric vehicles. So now I'm talking about markets and interconnectors, and that's not really the theme for today. But let's get to the best. Maybe some of you have guessed why I'm not talking about that yet. We don't have a lot of batteries in the Danish system, actually. And maybe that's a bit disappointing, but on the other hand, I also think it's an interesting result that we are able to operate this system without batteries still, or with very few batteries. So today we have 76 megawatts of batteries in this system with a peak demand of around 6 gigawatts. So almost nothing, you could say. But we are expecting it to grow quite soon and quite quickly, but not to a very excessive amount. Still maybe around these 500-600 megawatts in the longer term, which is small when we are talking about many or tens or 20s of gigawatts of renewables. So, but it is, I should mention, this is of course uncertain, and we have information from one of our DSOs that they see a pipeline of 1.5 gigawatts of batteries already. Developers contacting them and wanted to know how they can get connected. We don't expect all of that to happen, but of course it could, at least some of it. So why didn't this happen yet? Well, we do have the interconnectors. We do have flexible thermal power plants already to balance the system. We have flexible electric heating, and we also have demand response. So there is not, as we see it, at least not up till now, we don't see a huge need for batteries, but it might be just around the corner. We also do, I have to, even representing the government and the regulator, we do have to admit that we do have some regulatory barriers still that we are trying to solve. And that is, one thing is the grid tariffs, paying both for consuming and for producing as a battery. That is a barrier for the business case of a battery. So we are trying to solve this, and there are also some issues with permits of location, but we expect that to be solved quite soon. And then we expect batteries to ramp up as mentioned. So, and that will probably happen because of cost decline and also because of all of these new renewables getting into the system, more needs for ancillary services. And especially when we talk about ancillary services, then it very much depends on the market design of each of these ancillary service products. And we have a few years ago added this new ancillary service market we call FFR. That's the fastest one, and we see a lot of interest from batteries in that specific market. And talking about ancillary services, here you can see an overview of these different markets. We have from the very fast one with very small volume, and then to slower ones with a larger volume. I'm sure that's similar to many other systems. But it's interesting to look at what we like to communicate it with vehicles to make it. I don't know if that makes it easier to understand, but a fast car that cannot carry a lot of luggage compared to maybe some two-seater or maybe four-seater smaller car. Maybe this is a Berlingo or something like that. They can have some more megawatts, and then a truck. Maybe it's a useful picture. I don't know. But let's look at who's actually providing these ancillary services. So For this new market FFR, we see for new pre-qualified providers last year was 17 megawatts of batteries. And it's quite a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a small market. So those 17 megawatts, they might be able to cover more than 50% of the total market. So they are pre-qualified recently. Looking at the bit slower ones here, we have more batteries and then electric boilers as well. So that's that's a kind of flexibility, a way to use electricity when it's very cheap to produce heat. Heat is much easier to store, and then we distribute that in our district heating grids for heating the houses. So an important and very low-tech and cheap technology for balancing the system. We also have some other kinds of demands. I'm actually not sure what this load bank is, but a fan set, I guess that's some kind of industrial consumer that can provide down regulation. So that's for the faster ones. There was one more here. Also electric boilers and electric vehicles for this FCR N, this one. And for the slower ones, we do have more traditional technologies, electric boilers, and then also wind turbines, providing both up and down regulation, or at least being pre-qualified to do it. So this doesn't mean that they bid into the market every hour, but they are pre-qualified. And you might wonder, okay, how can a wind turbine provide up regulation? It's probably producing at maximum all the time, but it could be a part of their market strategy to only bid 90% of their expected production into the market, or it could be that their forecast is not accurate when they bid into the day-ahead market. Then they get new weather data later and find out they actually have more power, and they can then offer that to up regulation. So again, this is just new pre-qualified technologies this year. It's not the full list of all the providers of the service. But the conclusion, as I see it, is that it's a broad picture of providers. So, and that's also one of our key learnings. We don't count on one specific technology to provide all the services, and we also try to keep as technology neutral approach as possible. So we request the service we need for the grid, but we don't care about if it's a battery or a wind turbine or whatever is behind that inverter or synchronous machine. So we are not in front in the deployment of batteries, but in Europe, we were actually the first one to implement a grid code for battery storage. Already, I think around 2015, we had a huge boom of rooftop solar panels, and we got some idea information that this might be followed up by household batteries. And then we feared that since there were no regulation, this could actually provide, this could cause some grid stability issues if we didn't have proper regulation for this battery. So therefore, we very quickly, or relatively quickly, it took 1.5 years still. That's not super quick, but it was as quick as we could do it, made this new regulation. Now I said before that we try to keep a technology neutral approach, but this one we prioritize to make it very quick and simple. And by simple, I mean it was only directed at batteries. It didn't cover all different kinds of storage technologies. Then we wanted to do that later, but we wanted to make sure to have a battery regulation in place as fast as possible. And this has then since been, it has been more or less directly adopted by European regulation. So the European storage grid code is to a large extent based on this Danish one. And the Danish one has also been updated, and the sixth version will be in operation by May this year. So it's happening fast, and I think one of our learnings is that it's if we see an urgent need, then it's good to make a quick regulation for it, and it's fine to update it later still or expand it later. Anyway, we don't know the future, so we don't know what will happen in 10 years. So it's fine to react on what we see as development right now. And these 6 versions, it includes all kinds of storage. It's divided in not by many technologies, but it's divided in 2 categories: synchronous and non-synchronous or inverter-based. And then what's behind those inverters, we don't care. It can be a battery or a compressed air storage or any kind. And the same for the synchronous, actually. We do see some kinds of synchronous storages in Denmark, some kind of a thermal heat storage that can produce both heat and electricity from hot stones around 600 degrees. So you take out the heat and put it through a turbine and a generator. So that can actually be a replacement for a power plant, you could say, but with storage instead of fuel behind that generator. And we also included vehicle to grid in this regulation. Yeah. So key learnings here: focus on the needs for the system and the contact point, the inverter or the generator, but not on what's behind that. That's not important for the grid to know that. Just need to give the right requirements, and then follow the development of technologies closely. Then this boom that we expected in batteries, it didn't happen, and that's also fine. But it was better to be prepared soon than to be surprised too late, we thought. This is we have looked a lot at on these kind of grid codes already, but here you can just see the frequency limited frequency sensitivity mode for batteries. That there's a flat profile here, so it's only when we are over a certain frequency that the battery has to ramp down. If it's in production mode, ramp down, and even if the frequency becomes very high, it has to go to no, it has to. If it's producing here, this is production and this is consumption. So if the frequency goes very high, then it has to go from production to consumption mode. Yes, that was the Danish experiences for batteries. Now turning to grid forming again. I'm sorry to say that we don't have that much experience yet. At least we haven't implemented. Now I can see what Saudi Arabia and many other countries are doing. We are not that far in Denmark. And the reason is the same as for the batteries. We do not yet see the needs, actually. We do have a quite strong grid. We have some strong grid components that can take care of the grid strength for now, at least. Not forever, for sure. Inverter-based components also already supports the grid. The wind and solar do in the current grid codes and also in the markets. So yeah, maybe I should mention this: the way to where we distinguish between grid requirements and markets is that in this flat profile here, that's what's marketized, and it's only if we go outside of the normal operation, then it's a requirement for all connected to the grid. So we aim at being in this normal operation mode here. So that's the link between requirements and marketization, you could say, roughly and simply speaking. Yes. But we actually do see some challenges emerging soon. Now I talked to my good colleagues in Eginet, the Danish TSOs, and borrowed some slides from them, and they made this map, this heat map of where they do see some problems already today and more problems emerging in the near future. So they are monitoring and taking care of the grid stability. And they also have 3 interesting cases from just recently that I would like to mention here. So this is Western Jutland. And out here is the North Sea, where all the wind is and where the offshore wind farms are. And also the interconnectors. This is interconnector 2. UK. It is connected over here, yeah. And this is interconnected to Netherlands. Cobra cable and Viking link, they are called. So they're connected to the AC grid quite close to each other, and these are based on voltage source converters. So we saw, how is it? Yeah, we saw an incident that appeared. I actually don't know exactly how it appeared. It just suddenly appeared. This voltage oscillations between these two converters. And what I understand from my good Energinet colleagues is that we don't really know why and how this happened, but they can operate in different modes. And when they were in voltage mode, then the oscillation started, and they could damp it by going to another mode, to a reactive power mode, I think it's called. So this is something they are now investigating more, but this is just one example of what inverter-based technologies or these large power inverter-based technologies can cause of unforeseen problems that we have to consider in a new inverter-based system. That's one case for HVDC converters. The second one is here in this area, Lolland, where it's quite a weak connection we have there, and we do have a lot of renewables there. The land area is cheap, so a lot of developers like to put solar panels and wind farms there. Then we had an incident because of actually just caused by a market price change from negative to positive, and then a lot of solar and wind power suddenly turning on in a very short time, just when the hour switch. That caused a voltage drop by almost 3% in this 5-minute window, and that is, of course, obviously that's also a challenge caused by inverter-based technologies, but also caused by market design, you could say. So one thing to consider here could be to put some kind of requirements on the ramp rates, especially in the hourly shifts or whenever the price goes from positive to negative, because if this is ramped up to much more gigawatts in just 5 or 8 years, then this can be a real problem. But these issues didn't cause any blackouts, only these voltage drops you could see. The last example here is from this Viking link connection to the UK I just mentioned before. It's a 1.4 gigawatt connection, and the biggest one we do have in Denmark, and it has actually tripped several times since it was put in operation a few years ago. But this time there was a problem on the UK side, not on the Danish side, of course, which meant we had to redirect 1.4 gigawatts very, very fast. And this caused a very high rate of change of frequency. We already talked about this rate of change of frequency. It is a requirement that all generators, batteries, and so on stay on the grid to some amount of Rockhoff change, but this was higher than that requirement, and it did cause a few plants to trip, but luckily it didn't cause a blackout. But again, this is something, it shows that maybe we don't have enough inertia in the system, at least not at this point. So these incidents that has led us to, or led Energinet to look more into system needs, and especially when we talk about grid forming. So they have initiated 2 projects. The first one is about investigating the needs of the system. They're doing this by, what did I put here? Yeah, they're doing this by an analytical approach of the grid and trying to define different kind of products or categories of needs. And they will publish a report about this in later this year. So that's one project. The other one we call Grid Forming Deployment Project, and this is about talking to technology providers and finding out what can these technologies actually provide. Mr. Tigger already explained a lot about these, what the technologies can provide. We would like to have the direct dialogue with all these technology providers. So we have had some workshops already, and found a group of technology providers, and now they are delivering models of their technologies to Energinet, so we can test it in these electromagnetic transient kind of models. We are not planning so far to do hardware in the loop test, but I think that could actually be maybe an interesting next step, as you recommend. But for now, the first step is to do these transient models of the technologies. And the project will also end this year in the fall. Maybe there will be a report published, but the results are positive so far, they say. So Energinet expect that all these technologies, they can provide all the needs that we have today. So now it's also a matter of costs, how to provide these services in the cheapest way. So that's the experiences here from back home from Denmark. We don't have a lot of batteries in the system today. They are welcome on market conditions. We don't discriminate if they can compete in these many different kinds of ancillary service markets or day-ahead markets, then they are more than welcome. We do see them coming in now, and we expect a lot more on the short term. And the same for grid forming. We don't have it yet. We don't have the requirements yet, but we are looking into it with these two new projects, and hopefully we'll have published analysis later this year, and then I'm happy to share these results, of course. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Louis, for the excellent presentation on the Danish case. As I could see from your presentation and also from the Danish situation, in a scenario of high penetration of wind and solar generation, variable renewable resource, we cannot work only with the flexibility on the supply side. We need to explore the flexibility on the demand side. So my question, I think that is linked with another question from the audience, is how are you exploring this flexibility? Which mechanisms, which tools are you using for that? The market, the tariffs?
Yes, good question. We definitely see the demand side as an important role in balancing the system. So we, like all of Europe, we have a very market-based approach. So we try to incentivize as much as possible with markets as a start. We also believe that this is a good, this can foster a lot of innovation, because on the government side or TSO side, we don't know all the solutions, but if you put the incentives out there, then a lot of interesting things that we couldn't predict can appear. And we already see, both from the heating sector, the transport sector, the flexibility happening. In some areas where it doesn't happen by itself, but where we think it should happen, for instance, with electric vehicles, we do have pilot projects or sandbox project, you could say, where we partner up the TSO with some companies, private companies or distribution grid companies, and try to make experiments for how to bid into the balancing markets. For instance, we also try to have very close dialogues with the private sector, listen to their ideas when there's a need for change in regulation. One thing that's been discussed for a long time is, for instance, the minimum bid size in some of these balancing markets. Because if we want to really activate the distributed resources, then we can't have 10 megawatts as the lowest bid. Then there will be no electric vehicles, or then at least it's going to be a lot of work for some aggregator to gather that much capacity. So we try to be flexible in adjusting our regulation and both market regulation, connection regulation, and update it frequently whenever we need. And you mentioned the grid tariffs. That's another thing we're also working on right now and have been working on for a few years, because we see maybe similar to Brazil, we see but not to the same extent, of course, but we have a lot of generation in the North Sea. There's not a lot of people living there. There's not a lot of industry or any kind of electricity demand, but all the people are in the east. So, of course, we can build transmission lines, and that is also often the cheapest solution. But why not at least try to give some appropriate incentives by having lower tariffs for demand close to the good renewable resources, and vice versa. So we are trying to develop that in the tariffs. That's one tariff product we are working on, and another one is a limited access discount on the tariff. So if you can accept to be interrupted once in a while in critical situations, then you get a discount on the tariff. It's not implemented yet, but it's something we're working on.
Depending on the electricity quality, right? We thought about that once here in Brazil also. In ANEL, we discussed something really closer to this idea. You pay, your payment for the tariff is related to the quality of energy that you receive. Thank you, Louis. I'll take some questions from the audience. I'm not sure if anyone here wants to make the question also. I'll take from the message I received. Okay. When we talk about ancillary services such as reactive power support for voltage control, or even frequency control, okay, a question arises about the best way to handle it. Should we treat it as a market product with a specific remuneration for that product? Or should this kind of service product be part of the grid code as a requirement to access into the grid? This is a limit that we want to understand. What kind of these products may be a market product, or we need to pay for that, and what kind of products must be a requirement to access the main grid?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think none of us wants to pay more than necessary, and most of our electricity systems come from a history where these services were included from the power plants, from the synchronous machines already. So why suddenly do we have to start to pay for this? The European approach is still to try to marketize as much as possible. And I think if there are already machines on the grid that did provide this before, they should be able to bid into these markets at a very low price. Maybe we are paying a little bit more, but if there's too many who can do it, then the price will be very low anyway. So we still of course, it's also a mindset, you could say, but we very much believe in the marketized approach. So we want to marketize as much as possible within normal operation, and then only if we go to some incidents, then everybody capable have to be able to react. Some of these services are easier to provide than others. I think frequency, active power, it's much easier because it's not. It doesn't matter where it's located in the grid. It can be anywhere in the grid as long as the grid is strong enough. So that could be the first one to marketize. I would say all the active power services, fast and slow. And then there are the more location-specific ones like reactive power, maybe also black start, or I'm sure there are others. We have found them still difficult to marketize, and yeah, we have not succeeded yet, but I think we are still trying. But we of course we only want to do it to an extent where there's enough competition, and we still believe it's the cheapest way. But if there's only one supplier in one specific point, then maybe we need to have another approach, a dialogue, or maybe it needs to be a grid component that the system operator can own. The system operators, then they are not allowed to own any active power components, but they can own reactive power components and grid stability components. So that can be a solution for voltage, maybe.
No, it's working. About dispatch order, in the sense of at a specific moment, how do you decide which storage system should be the one generating, or if you should be importing energy from another place, or if your necessity is not the generation but ancillary services, for example, whether you should be using those systems from a battery or from a STATCOM, from another system. How do you make those decisions? Is it purely market dynamics? Do you have a central operator that does it? If the central operator does it, how exactly do they perceive the benefits of choosing A or B? How exactly does that work? Thank you.
Yes, to put it simply, it is purely market-based. So it's a merit order list. That's the case for the day-ahead market and also for most of the ancillary services markets. There are a few of them that also the intraday market is a pay-as-bid market. So that's more a bilateral trade, and there are a few exceptions when the volume is very low and we risk to have gaming in the market, having one setting the marginal price very high to push the price up for the rest. But in general, it's a merit order.
But how do you behave in those cases?
How do the TSO?
Those specific cases in which you have very low liquidity?
If we do have low liquidity, then we haven't had issues with low liquidity yet on the normal frequency markets. But in a case where we do, then the TSO is allowed to go and order specific plants to bid into the market, or even put out a tender to build new components. But yeah, for some of the ancillary services markets, we have a two-step process. So we have a reserve market and an activation market. So by having the reserve market, then we make sure that there are enough bidders in the activation market. And we see the prices for these reserve markets being quite low because it's easy. It's a no-brainer for most technologies. So we don't have issues with volume. Another solution is also another reason is that we share the balancing reserves with our neighboring countries. So the balancing, it's covering all the Nordic area actually, the balancing. So now I talked a lot about electric boilers and batteries, but I think most of these services are provided by hydropower from Norway, actually.
It's so interesting as the market makes the balance between the demand and supply. We are here in Brazil, we have a centralized dispatch of the main power plant. So it's so different to change this mindset, but it works, right, in Denmark.
Well, the transition is difficult, yes. I think. It's also been difficult in Denmark. How do we go from a centralized dispatch system? How do we convince the generators to go to a much more risky world with the market, away from a fixed-priced system? And I think I see that all over the world. It's maybe we have come a bit further in Northern Europe. We have done some negotiations in the late 90s. Quite expensive, I have to say, but at the end there was a deal with the national generation companies to move to the market, and then they had to offer something back. But they got a big pile of money for this, and it's a privilege for a rich country like Denmark to be able to do that, but it's not necessarily a solution for all countries. So I recognize it's a challenge for sure.
Yes, yes. Only the fast products, some of the fast products are dispatched by the TSO, right? They have it has the control in some way in the real-time operation, I imagine.
Yeah, they have the control. They activate the ancillary services and have the real-time control, but they do not have the control of day ahead and intraday. Yeah. So it's within the hour, you could say, they control.
Yeah, perfect. I have just, I'm not sure if, okay, I have one question here, but.
Right, hi, Simon from Chile. How do you see a near zero marginal cost market working in Denmark? Is it still profitable for companies to work through ancillary services and capacity market?
It's a good question. In Denmark, we still see it as profitable, or a good way to have this. It's almost a religion, right? The energy-only market versus capacity markets. We don't have capacity markets in Denmark yet, but I think we're also blessed by being a small country surrounded by bigger countries. So if the other countries are fine, then we are probably also fine. But in Europe, there is definitely a development towards more capacity markets, at least in Germany. But I also think other European markets. And we do have a project in Danish Energy Agency going on now about looking into capacity markets and again analyzing if it's going to be needed. We distinguish between the capacity market, where we pay for a plant being available all the time and bidding to the market, and then we have the strategic reserve. That's almost the same, except they are not allowed to bid into the market. They are only allowed to be activated when we reach the price ceiling. So they don't disturb the market, you could say. On the other hand, then they just stand there and wait for years without operating. So that's also a discussion. Do you want to pay for a plant being standby, or do you actually want it to take part in the market, but then also accepting to distort the market a bit? But yeah, the European development, I think, is going towards more capacity markets, but not yet in Denmark.
Okay, I think we have time for the last question I have here. Okay. In Denmark, electric vehicles have been used as storage for the electrical system, I think, yes. And does it work satisfactorily?
Yeah, I think so. I think it works quite well. I have an electric vehicle. I always charge at night. I have an app where I just say I need 50% or 80% by 7 o'clock in the morning, and then it finds the cheapest prices. It's only, my app is only based on, now this is very personal experience, but my app is only based on the day ahead price. So I'm not contributing to the balancing markets. And that's, of course, that's not completely satisfactory for me. I would like to also be part of the balancing markets. I know there is at least one company who also aggregates vehicles, electric vehicles, to bid into that market. But yeah, I'm not part of that. I'm not a customer there yet. We do, one of the big issues with these distributed flexible resources is to have to determine the baseline when you provide flexibility. So what were you going to use before you put that bid in the market? And it's quite complicated and hairy, but we do have these balanced responsible parties that take care of bidding to the wholesale market for all their customers, including me, and they could in principle be the ones to also offer this flexibility and talk to me about when I would like to charge my car. But now we are developing this new market actor called an aggregator that should be allowed to also contact me and change my baseload. But that will, of course, disturb the position in the market for my balanced responsible party. So there's some regulation development going on now, how the balanced responsible party and the aggregator should communicate. And the point is just to let more companies become aggregators and to create a stronger market for aggregators to find all these distributed flexible units like electric vehicles. And then I think the market can foster even more when that regulation is in place.
Thank you, Lou. I think we are finished now. Okay, thank you, Louis. We had an inspiring moment with you today. Thank you for that. Thank you all for your participation.
Excelente. Agradeço à Lívia e ao Luís pela rica discussão e, na sequência, nós daremos início à sessão 3. Nesta sessão, debateremos a experiência chinesa. Para isto, convido ao palco como debatedor o coordenador adjunto de outorga de autorização de geração da ANEEL, Tito Ângelo Lobão Cruz. E como palestrante, o diretor de desenvolvimento de negócios da State Grid, Wang Juliang. Por gentileza, fiquem à vontade.
Mr. Louis just had a very professional and interesting presentation. Before my presentation, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for your invitation. I'm Mr. Wang Junliang. Portuguese name is Juliano, from State Grid Project Holding, in charge of the Director of Business Development Department, in charge of strategic plan of company, and also the greenfield auction, M&A, transaction and also other business development opportunities. It's my pleasure to share some information regarding the application battery energy storage in China. This is contents of my presentation. The first is the development situation of a new type energy storage in China. Second is the new type energy storage application scenarios. Three, the challenges of battery energy storage. The first one is the energy storage work of State Grid Corporation of China. Next one is the processing mechanism of battery storage in China. Next one is challenges and the mechanism and measures for new type energy storage. The last one is the recommendations. Okay. The large-scale integration of renewable energy into the grid has brought challenges to the power system. So build a new type of power system and ensure energy security is necessary, is very, very necessary. And also issued by Chinese regulation agency by 2025, the new type energy storage will enter large-scale development stage. Meanwhile, the electrochemical energy storage performance will be for improvement. System cost, will be for improved. And also system cost will be reduced by more than 30%. Okay. China energy storage installed capacity has grown rapidly. By end of 2024, the total capacity has reached about 137.9 gigawatt, among which the new energy storage scale exceeds pumped storage for the first time. Yes, before end of 2024, the major storage is pumped storage. By end of last year, the new type storage project already more than the pumped storage. New type energy storage technologies have presented diversified development. The lithium-ion percentage is the 97%. Okay, we can see here. This is percentage, okay. New type energy storage is 56.8%, and pumped storage is 42.4%. For the new type energy storage project, the lithium battery storage is 97. Yes. Yeah, it is here. The lithium-ion battery storage is 97.2. The lithium-ion battery storage technology has the advantages of the fast response speed, flexible layout, and also the wide application. Currently, the single cell capacity is increased from 280 AH to 300 AH. So for the other type of the new battery storage, I just summary the information. Firstly, for the flow battery energy storage. This storage has the advantage of good safety, long life, and also independent power and capacity design. But also the problems is low energy efficiency, low energy density. Next one is for the compressed air energy storage. This type of storage also has the advantage of large power, large capacity, and long service life. But also the problems is low energy efficiency, long construction period, and also the limited for the cave storage selection. This is a project already COD in China, in Hubei province, is a compressed air storage project. The total capacity is 300 megawatt. And also the generated energy is 1,500 megawatt hours. Okay, next one is for the flow wheel energy storage. Flow wheel energy storage has the advantage of high power density, fast response speed, and also long service time. But the challenge is small energy storage capacity and also high self-discharge rate and also high cost. Next one is for the hydrogen energy storage. This storage is a very important bridge connecting gas, electricity, heat, and other form of energies. But also the problems is low energy conversion efficiency and also high cost and large infrastructure investment. Okay. New type of energy storage technologies such as flow wheel, compressed air, and also hydrogen energy storage has relative advantages in some indicators, but there is still a significant gap in comprehensive technical and economic indicators. So electrochemical energy storage represented by lithium-ion battery has relative advantage in terms of the technical, inventory, and also standards and application management system of core components. Okay. Next one is for the development of the next one is for the just the summary of the part one. The carbon target of China is 30-60. 30 means carbon peak in 2030. 60 means carbon neutralization in 2060. So by 2025, end of 2025, it's expected new type energy storage capacity will reach more than 40 gigawatt. Okay, the second is for the new type energy storage application scenarios. Okay, scenarios including the scenarios including the power generation side, transmission and the distribution side, customer side, and also the integrated energy system. In here, I just highlight the last one. This is the first one, second one, third one, and the last one. I just highlight this one. The integration of source, network, load, and storage requires virtual power plant, strong local power grid, and also green power supply zone. But this is future development direction. Okay, next one is for the challenges of battery storage, energy storage. Battery energy storage has reached higher capacity, but there is still problems of significant technical supply in basic surgery and also system integration, engineering, construction, and operation and maintenance. The security and reliability of battery energy storage systems still need improvement. It's necessary to strengthen system security, protection, and intelligent control technologies throughout the life cycle. Okay. At this stage, battery energy storage as a power storage component is often compared with the wind power. This is not fair. Actually, we can consider the storage should be considered output, but the most important is we should consider the contribution for the power grid, just like the peak saving, frequency modulation, also voltage regulation, and also standby power supplies, and also emergency support. Okay, and next one is the next one is the energy storage work of SGCC state grid. In here, I just summary the information. State grid already created the battery energy storage technology lab. It's a professional lab brand. Also, we have the experience, ability, and also the technical support, and also the engineering construction experience. Okay, the 5 is the pricing mechanism of Bess in China. China's battery energy storage pricing mechanism is a complex system, very complex. But from today, the mechanism already translated from policy driven to the market driven. But up to today, the different model is still adopted. Okay. This is four models. The first model is a cost plus model. Second model is a market bidding model. Third one is listing model. The next one is revenue salary model. Four models is under operation. Next is for the future trades. In future, the cost must be decreased. It's expected that by 2030, the cost of lithium battery energy storage system will below 0.3 RMB per watt hour. And also second is the policy and market coordination. Means the government and the market should be coordinated each other. Next one is for the diversified application scenarios. Next one is the global competition. Okay. This is some data. This is some data by end of September 2024. The total installed capacity of new energy storage reached 58,520 megawatt, equal to 12.8 gigawatt hour. If we compare 2023, is about 86 increasement. Lithium-ion battery is about 97%, and 1.1% is for compressed air energy storage, and also the lead carbon acid battery storage is about 0.8%, and also the flow battery storage is about 0.4%, and the RS is about 0.7%. So in China, energy storage processing mechanism should be established and improved continually. Electricity plus capacity. This model means electricity plus capacity. This model should be considered. And the difference between the peak and the valley price should be increased. Next one is for the recommendation. According to the ABSAE, the total capacity in Brazil for energy storage is 291 megawatt hours, but 2/3 of it is distributed in Amazon. Apart from 67 megawatt hour lithium battery storage project authorized to ESA step. For others, is no regulated business, no regulation business. It's estimated that by 2030, the battery storage investment will reach 23.4 gigawatt hour. And also the Brazilian regulation agency already already finished the public consultation regarding the battery storage bidding rule, but not yet published. So this is only my recommendation. I suggest MME and EP can consider the energy storage project, especially for the lithium project, should be planned and feasibility studied uniformly by Brazilian regulatory agency, just maybe MME or maybe EP, based on the requirements of the power grid. After the best project defined, the concessionaire can be selected by public auction process, just like the transmission line concession auction model. Government defined the project. The investors just offer the drop. Which one's drop is lower? Okay, they can win the project. I think this is the best way. This is easy way, and it can also can also increase the competitive. Most companies will be interested for the participation of the project. Just for this SDBH, State Grid. SDBH is Brazil Holding. We are a transmission company. We only interested for the battery storage in transmission side. If for the generation side, it's impossible for us for participation because we cannot select the storage project based on the new energy project, subject new energy storage project. But if MME or EP define a project in the generation side, okay, we will consider for the participation. Okay, this is my suggestion. Next one is for the. Next one is what we already done for SDBH Brazil Holding. From June 2021 to June 2024, we already finished the R&D project, research and application of pumped storage power station in Brazilian power grid. Second is from June 2023 to December 24. We finished another R&D project, research and application of battery energy storage in transmission system project. Also the China-Brazil Electric Innovation and Steering Alliance, EISA, already been launched in end of 2024 and received very strong support from Brazilian government and regulatory agencies. As a platform for information sharing, technical innovation, and also experience exchange, EISA can play an active role in Brazil's BESS development. And SDBH already coming to Brazil market from 2010, almost 15 years. We continually following the market oriented and long-term and localization development. We work together with the Brazilian government agencies and also department involved in the power grid planning and regulatory. SDBH aims to facilitate the communication and cooperation, conducting research in the field of energy storage, make some contribution to Brazil's energy transition and power sector development. That's all for my presentation. Thanks for listening. This is my email, and this is my email and mobile. If any interested questions, please hesitate to contact me. It's my pleasure to communicate with all of you. Okay, that's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wang. I will speak in Portuguese. Ao ver a experiência da China, nós podemos comparar muito bem com algumas características do Brasil, porque temos muitas características parecidas, né? País continental, uma extensão enorme, ok. Então, nós estamos falando aqui, Mr. Wang, das similaridades que tem entre o Brasil e a China, ser um país continentais. Nós temos grandes centros de geração de energia distante de grandes centros de carga e alguns desafios são bem semelhantes. No entanto, embora também temos alguma similaridade com relação ao crescimento das das fontes renováveis, a questão do armazenamento ainda estamos um pouco atrás com relação à experiência da China. vi na sua apresentação que há várias soluções e a China tem estudado e trabalhado com algumas delas. No Brasil, nós temos algumas regiões específicas onde tem muita geração de fonte renovável, fonte intermitente, com um potencial de uma dificuldade, um potencial de problemas na rede, né, em que devem ser solucionados e que o armazenamento de energia pode ser uma solução. Eu queria que o senhor pudesse, se possível, discorrer mais sobre essa questão de soluções específicas em regiões específicas. Qual é a experiência da China com relação a isso?
In China, the energy application and also the layout of the energy is also similar with China. In China, the generation is north and northeast of China, but the custom is south or southeast of China. Almost Brazil is same. But the most challenge for China is the big challenge for China is maybe little difference between China and Brazil. In China, the coal generation is the major generation, more than 50%, But in Brazil, is a hazard. So hazard means clean energy. But anyhow, for the carbon development of the market, every country needed to decrease the carbon flow out. China, China is in my presentation, I already presented 4 models in China regarding the requirement for the battery storage. All the 4 models is applied in China. But in future, applied in China, I think the big difference between China and Brazil is for the political or market. In China, I remember if some companies need to invest a new energy project, okay, it's mandatory. You must invest 10% to 20% of the storage project together with this generation, new energy generation project. But from earlier of this month or end of next month, last month, China government already canceled this requirement. Anyhow, I think the storage in Brazil is just started. The pumped storage, 2 pumped storage project already almost more than 30 years already not put in operation. But I know EP just make the design for the layout of the pumped storage project, and also EP and ANIO already start the regulatory and bidding policy public consultation process for the battery storage. I think maybe my suggestion in my presentation is just the easy way is the most important way. If the battery storage project should be selected and and also the feasibility study should be executed by the company, it's very difficult. You should know the power grid. You should select a project and define project and make the feasibility study for the project, including R1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then register the project EP is a long-term period and also very very difficult. So the simple way, most simple way is the most efficiency way. So my recommendation is, okay, plan and also feasibility study by government, regulatory agency. The investor, just go to investment. Okay, investment, construction, and operation. Okay, this is my suggestion.
Obrigado. Eu vou aqui, aproveitando a sua pergunta e também querendo saber se tem algumas perguntas aqui, eu vou deixar a minha para depois, vou privilegiar a pergunta aqui da plateia.
Well, first off, I would like to thank you for your insightful presentation. I'm Francisco Victor. I work at EPE. And generally, I have two questions for you. Actually, if they are too long, you can just pick one to answer. But generally, we more or less know how American or how European energy markets work. But it's quite interesting to see a presentation about China, and it got me somewhat curious. You showed 4 models. You were now speaking about those 4 models. How does it quite work when picking which model should be chosen in China? I mean, if you're working concurrently, simultaneously with 4 models, how exactly does that fit? And is there a better one you're aiming to always go with this one? Or are you always alternating between those 4 because they have their 4 niches? How exactly does that work? And on another hand, you talked about how you as State Grid don't see batteries as a generation asset, but more as a transmission asset. You're also studying pumped hydro, reversible hydro, and that is a generation asset, right? Or do you also see that just as a transmission asset? Thank you.
Okay, I try to answer your 2 questions. The first actually is very difficult to answer. Which model, 4 models, which model is the best one? In my understanding, different stage, different answers. Maybe 10 years ago, the first and the second model is the best one. But up to today, in my understanding, the third one and the fourth one is the best one. Second question. Sorry.
Pumped storage. And how, if you see pumped storage as a transmission asset or also as a generation asset?
Okay. In China, most of the pumped storage project is operated by transmission sector, not generation, not customer. It will be dispatched by Chinese ONS, means the dispatch center will dispatch the pumped storage project. In China, 2 big companies, 2 big groups in charge of whole China. One is State Grid, another one is South Grid. So in the subject area, both of the 2 companies have their dispatch center to dispatch whole project, whole transmission, generation, also including pumped storage project. So in my understanding, it belongs to the transmission side. Okay.
Thank you.
Obrigado. Mais alguma pergunta da plateia? Alguém? Nós já recebemos uma pergunta aqui pelo chat. Vou aguardar. Mr. Wang, você comentou que na China existem diferentes formas de precificação para a inserção de baterias, incluindo a promoção de mecanismo para precificação de capacidade. Essa contratação é feita via leilão?
Actually, some of the project is defined by bidding process. Most of the project is defined not bidding process, but the construction. Who is the contractor is selected by bidding process. Different in Brazil, because in Brazil, all the generation, transmission, and distribution sector is competitive sectors. The government can select the investor and also the operator by market model, maybe bidding process, maybe an auction process. Give your concession period 30 years, or for story project maybe 15 years. You can select the investor by market model. I think Brazil should be 100% market model.
Tenho aqui uma outra pergunta. A pergunta mais com relação ao eventual insucesso de alguma tecnologia. Ele primeiro parabéns, Sr. Wang, pela sua apresentação. A China tem vários projetos de armazenamento. Qual foi o pior projeto e que não deveria ter sido implementado na avaliação posterior aí da China? Um projeto que foi implementado e depois, de certa forma, se arrependeu. Não era aquela melhor solução para aquele problema ou para aquela situação. Existiu? Essa é a pergunta que foi trazida.
Pumped storage of Bess. Pumped. I remember so many pumped storage is already put in COD. I remember end of last year, I together with the delegation of EP and MME visited one pumped storage project in Jiangsu province, the Jurong pumped storage project. It's not 100% COD, but some unit already COD, some unit is under preparation. I think if somebody interested, maybe go to there. Okay, because you can see the unit under operation, and also you can see the unit under construction. This is your sample. But if this is not the biggest one, if you only would waste the biggest already in COD, okay, maybe I can give you another suggestions by email, by phone call. I will check with my colleague in China.
Ok. Mais algum questionamento, alguma pergunta? Não sei como estamos de tempo aí na... Vai mais aqui.
Nobody asked to ask. I'm going to keep bringing other questions. Just a last one. I'm not even sure if you are aware of what I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Energy storage, of course, there are many technologies. The seminar here today is about Bess batteries. We also spoke about pumped hydro just now, but China recently built a large gravitational storage. Do you know anything about that? How was the decision to build a gravitational storage that's solid, that moves concrete blocks instead of water? How is the decision for that taken? Is that somehow proposed by the market or by the operator? How does that work, and how does the pricing for that work? It was the first large-scale gravitational storage project in the world, so China was a pioneer in that.
This question already represented in my presentation. Okay, for the pumped storage project has a very significant advantage, just like big capacity, and also the stable stability output and also long-term period for operation. But also, for the pump storage project, need a big investment, and also you need to select the location. Actually, it's not very difficult to select location. This is one damage, one storage. This is up storage. You need to select, and also the construction period is almost more than 6 or 7 years. But for lithium ion storage project, is very quickly, maybe 1.5 year for construction enough. Also very easy to, most of the battery is manufactured in factory. Then just go to the site, select a place. The installation is I think easy. Also is a quickly response. It is also very quickly response. That's why by end of 2024, the capacity of lithium storage project already exceed to the pumped storage. This is my understanding.
Segundo a organização aqui, já estamos no final desse período. Só mais uma vez agradecer ao Mr. Wang pela sua apresentação e por responder aqui as perguntas. De fato, nós temos aqui no Brasil desafios muito grandes com relação à regulamentação especificamente do sistema de armazenamento. Não existe a figura do armazenador no nosso arcabouço regulatório, né, legal. E ele foi bem preciso aqui ao falar quais são as diferenças, né, que há entre a China e o Brasil com relação a esse tema. Mas muito obrigado, muito esclarecedor e muitas informações importantes podemos aqui obter da sua apresentação.
Um painel muito rico de informações. Agradecemos ao Tito e ao Wang pela troca de informações que nos proporcionaram. Encerradas as manifestações, as interações, nós informamos o encerramento da programação da parte da manhã. Informamos ainda que neste prédio temos o restaurante do Senac e também na região aqui da Ponte JK há algumas opções para o almoço. Nós retornaremos pontualmente às 14 horas com a sessão 4, intitulada Os Desafios para a Integração de Sistemas de Armazenamento à Experiência Chilena. Agradecemos mais uma vez a participação e a audiência de todos. Tenham um ótimo almoço e até daqui a pouco.